Everything you have was given to you and will be taken away. Your house, your reputation, your money, the relationships you have built over decades, all of it is held on terms you did not set and cannot renegotiate. The body itself is borrowed. You did not choose to have it and you will not choose the moment it is returned. There is precisely one thing, Seneca tells Lucilius in one of the most important sentences ever written in Latin, that belongs to you, the time in which you live. And even that, only if you claim it. Omnia, Lucili, aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything, Lucilius, belongs to others. Time alone is ours. This is the final teaching, the one the preceding argument has been building toward, and it is both more consoling and more demanding than it first appears. More consoling because it simplifies the question of what a good life requires, not wealth, not power, not the approval of others, not the favorable arrangement of circumstances, but only the use of the time you have been given. More demanding because that use cannot be borrowed, inherited, outsourced, or deferred. It must be done by you, with your actual hours, in the life you are actually living. Seneca wrote these words from a position of intimate familiarity with death. He had survived exile, illness, the capriciousness of Nero's court, and the daily proximity of political violence. He knew, in a way that most philosophers have only theorized, that the time available to any individual is genuinely uncertain, that the years he had were not guaranteed, that the morning was not necessarily followed by an evening under any arrangement he could rely upon. This knowledge did not break him. It clarified him. And this is the paradox at the center of his thought: the full recognition of mortality, rather than producing despair, produces the most acute form of presence available to a human being. We tend to treat death as the enemy of the good life. The thing that takes time, cuts possibility short, imposes the limit we would rather not acknowledge. But Seneca argues the opposite. The denial of death, the everyday, operational refusal to live with the awareness of finitude, is what makes the squandering of time possible. When you genuinely know that the hours are numbered, each hour becomes different. Not in a panicked or morbid way, but in the way that anything acquires new specificity when you understand it to be irreplaceable. Think of a day lived with the full understanding that it is one of a finite number. Not a small number necessarily, hope for many more, but a number that actually ends. What would you do differently with it? What would fall away as clearly not worth the allocation? What would become obviously important that you had been treating as optional? This is not a thought experiment in gratitude, though gratitude is one of its outcomes. It is a thought experiment in clarity, in the simplification that comes from taking the actual terms of existence seriously rather than living in a comfortable, numbing assumption of continuity. The Stoics had a practice called Memento mori, the deliberate contemplation of death. Not as an act of morbidity but as a cognitive discipline, a way of maintaining perspective on what actually matters. Seneca practiced it and recommended it. He suggests imagining each night that the day has ended completely, that whatever you have done today is what you have done, and tomorrow is a gift not yet given. This practice, when actually done rather than just described, produces a remarkable effect. It retroactively intensifies the day. The conversation you had becomes more specific in memory. The work you did carries more weight. The hours you wasted feel more genuinely wasted, and the hours you used well feel more genuinely used. But Seneca is careful about what he is recommending. He is not recommending anxiety. He is not recommending the restless, grasping urgency of someone who feels time running out and scrambles to stuff as much as possible into each moment. That is a kind of overcorrection, another form of the same fundamental confusion, the idea that quantity of experience is the measure of a life well lived. What he is recommending is something quieter and more difficult: clarity of intention. The practice of knowing what you are doing with your time and why, and letting that knowledge be shaped by the real understanding that this time is your life and not a rehearsal for it. What does it mean to live as though each day might be your last, without anxiety? It means to live with your priorities visible. To have, at the center of your days, the things that you have actually decided matter, not by default, not by habit, not by the slow accumulation of others' expectations, but by genuine examination and deliberate choice. It means to have fewer regrets available at any given moment, because you have not been systematically deferring the things you believe into a future that may not come in the form you expect. It also means a particular relationship to the past. Seneca argues that the person who has lived well, who has been truly present in their own life, who has not squandered time in the ways he has catalogued across all these arguments, possesses their past. It is not just gone, not merely behind them, but available to them as a genuine resource. The memories of a life actually lived are a kind of wealth. They can be returned to. They are dimensional. They offer, in the review, something of what they offered in the original experience. The person who was never quite there has only thin records. The person who was present has something more like a second life in memory. And the work of the philosopher, the long effort to understand how to live, creates a relationship to the past that extends even beyond the individual biography. You die, Seneca says, but if you have thought carefully about how to be human, you have participated in something that continues. The question you spent your life asking will be asked again. The answers you found, the errors you corrected, the clarity you achieved, these enter the common inheritance. This is not immortality in any supernatural sense. It is something more modest and perhaps more true, the understanding that careful living leaves a mark, and that the mark matters. What remains, then? What is the final counsel of the man who has thought about time more carefully than almost anyone who has ever lived? Not urgency. Not fear. Not a list of things to accomplish before the end. Simply this: know that the hours are yours, and treat them accordingly. Not all of them can be controlled. Not all of them can be given only to what you love. But some of them can. More than you currently believe. And those hours, the ones genuinely claimed, genuinely inhabited, genuinely yours, are the substance of the life you will have lived. Begin now. Not tomorrow. Not once things settle. Not in the version of yourself that will finally have everything arranged. Now, in this moment, with this life, in this hour that is yours. Omnia, Lucili, aliena sunt, tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything, Lucilius, belongs to others. Time alone is ours. That was the final episode of our Seneca series, on the shortness of life. Omnia aliena sunt. Tempus tantum nostrum est. Everything belongs to others. Time alone is ours. 2,000 years ago, a man who had lived at the center of power and wealth sat down and wrote the most honest thing he could think of. We hope it lands for you the way it has landed for so many others across the centuries. Subscribe to StoicForge. More ancient wisdom is coming. This is StoicForge. Ancient wisdom. Modern edge.